ways does your media product use, develop or challenge other forms and conventions of real media products? Well, firstly, my thriller film opening sequence uses the conventions and codes of other thriller films, such as The Silence of the Lambs. For example, the female protagonist in The Silence of the Lambs is introduced within the opening sequence, which is the same as my film, where my male protagonist is also introduced as the main character. The audience has to focus on both my character in my film and then obviously in The Silence of the Lambs they have to focus on the female protagonist. Another similarity is the nature of the both two films. The Silence of the Lambs nature is calm, where the audience can be familiar with the narrative of someone going to work. You can also tell a lot about the protagonist in Silence of the Lambs. You can tell that this is a healthy person that likes to exercise in the morning. She goes off to work and she's still sweaty. That you can tell the fact that she isn't in touch with like her ladylike stereotypical presentation, and that's similar to mine because my male protagonist is travelling through the tube, through the London Underground, and then arrives at work. Here you can tell the nature is very natural. It creates a realistic tone where the audience can also relate. So for location, my London Underground is an iconic landmark, and you can tell this is in London. So obviously the film is going to be set in London. Another thriller film that does that clearly is A White House Down, and you can tell this because within the opening sequence you're introduced to the Prime Minister of America, and this is also told by the accent of the characters, but also by the location. The narrative is of three helicopters coming down to the White House, and obviously this iconic landmark tells the audience that the film is set in America. Another thing is the storyline. Not the storyline of it being exactly what occurs, but the nature of it. So, for example, Law-Abiding Citizens, the opening sequence of that thriller movie is horrific, where it's got a crime scene as soon as within the first 30 seconds, whereas my film sets in a natural and more realistic tone to it. You have someone going to work, and that's just something normal. The mise-en-scène is also something which is similar, and I've developed this in my film as I've had the audience to become more familiar with the setting. Oh, it's in London, so they're expecting something to occur within that setting. To the audience about what type of characters it's going to be, what time it's going to be set, and what time of the year as well it's going to be set. The lighting is quite dark and quite dull, and that represents winter, or can also represent autumn and not maybe August time. That's because you can see that it's very cloudy. It's quite shadowy. There isn't much natural light, and that obviously you can see that's the time that the film is set. I use the typical conventions of thriller films through my typography in the titles. The sequence of the title appearing is also a convention. With obviously the production distribution companies at the beginning and at the end the director. So the sequence of the title is also conventional. Another thing that is similar in my thriller film to other thriller films is the use of props, and it meets the codes and conventions of other thriller films. For example, Law-Abiding Citizens, where they're in the opening sequence, the audience are introduced to one of the main props, which is the knife that the victim is stabbed by the villain. And that is similar to my thriller opening sequence, because the protagonist's boss hands over a pile of folders and papers, and I wanted to show the audience and present this as being a very important case. And she says, here's the case, please study it. And there is a shot, a close-up shot, where the audience see the boss handing it to the protagonist, and the protagonist then grabbing it towards himself. So the conventions of symbolic or very important props being represented in a more focused shot is what I've also done. The use of shots in my thriller films is very important, because it shows firstly the important characters and the level of which one is more important than the other. So in my thriller film, the camera looks down at the boss, whereas the facial expressions on the boss, when the camera is looking at the boss, her eyes are looking up towards the male protagonist, Michael. And that is similar to other thriller films, because in Law-Abiding Citizens, the villain looks down at the victim looks up. That also, the hierarchy there shows who is more important in the film. How is the opening of my thriller film, A Puppet on a String, different or similar to the conventions of other opening thriller movies?
Well, normally, if you see other movies, there's a common introduction. It's either one guy starting off, and then there's a flashback or something like that. But in thriller movies, and especially your movie, it starts off in a new and interesting way. It's just a normal life. So the guy leads a normal life until he turns different. And so that's why I think that that's the difference in similarities, I think, between your movie and other movies.
What about the atmosphere? Does it create a naturalistic atmosphere or a scary atmosphere?
Well, obviously it doesn't create a scary atmosphere unless you've planted it in inside a haunted house or anything. So it creates a natural atmosphere.
Alright, thank you.
Well, it's sort of like a natural kind of like feel to the film. Like you don't really need to know it's a thriller, like beforehand to notice that it is a thriller kind of thing. It's sort of like a natural approach. Like you can compare it to films like Silence of the Lambs or anything. The opening to that is like basically the same.
The differences are films such as The Hot Fuzz is different because The Hot Fuzz it's a very dramatic film compared to yours.
So the opening of Hot Fuzz, you would say, creates a dramatic tone and atmosphere, whereas my opening for the film is more naturalistic.